Before you say I do, somebody should tell you who signed the papers for this venue.
What is this? Why are you here?
I own this building now. Every chair, every light, every rose in that aisle.
Wait. You own... Since when? Is this true? Somebody explain what's happening.
Don't look at her like that. She left. She's the one who left you.
I didn't come to stop a wedding. I came to collect what's mine.
You must collect it now.
Collect what?
Ask your fiancé what she signed 6 years ago. Then ask yourself why the wedding planner works for me.
6 years before that wedding, Chiamaka was the kind of woman people admired quietly and envied loudly. She was the first daughter, the one who paid school fees before anyone asked, the one who came home from her banking job in Victoria Island, changed out of her heels, and still found the strength to help her mother count the day's market sales. She had a dream too, a small fashion label she was building in the evenings, sketching gowns on receipt paper because she couldn't afford a proper notebook. But dreams could wait. Family came first. That was what she believed. She was engaged to Tobena, 4 years together. She had watched him fail his first business twice, and both times it was her salary that kept the lights on in his office. She co-signed his loan. She gave her savings when the bank said no. She told herself that a woman who builds a man builds her own future too. Her younger sister, Nkechi, watched all of this from the corner of every family gathering, smiling the smile of someone counting silently. Nkechi was the beautiful one, the favorite, the one her mother introduced first at church. This is my daughter. She's studying abroad. Even when the program had ended 2 years earlier and nothing abroad had come of it, Nkechi had never built anything. She had only ever taken. It started small, a borrowed necklace that was never returned, a just this once loan that became a habit. Her mother had a phrase she used whenever Chiamaka tried to raise it. You have more. Abeg, allow your sister breathe. As if love was a finite thing that had to be rationed, and Nkechi's share had simply run out before she was born, so Chiamaka's portion had to cover the difference. Chiamaka remembered the year she turned 29, the year she finally saved enough to put down a deposit on her own small shop space in Yaba, 400 square feet, barely enough for 2 sewing machines and a fitting mirror, but hers. She had cried in front of the empty shop the day she got the keys. 2 weeks later, her mother asked her to give the deposit money to Nkechi instead, just until she settles into her new NYSC posting. Chiamaka refused for the first time in her life. Her mother did not speak to her for a month. Nkechi cried on the phone to relatives about how money changes people. The deposit stop stayed hers. It was the only thing at that point that ever did. Then it became Tobena. At first, it was innocent. Nkechi visiting the shared family house when Tobena came to see Chiamaka, staying a little too long in the sitting room, laughing a little too loud at his jokes. Chiamaka noticed. She said nothing. She told herself, this is my sister. Sisters do not do this to each other. But sisters did. One evening, Chiamaka came home early from work and found Nkechi in her bedroom, trying on the blush gown she had sketched and sewn for the engagement party, the one piece she had been most proud of in her life. Nkechi spun in front of the mirror, admiring herself, and when she saw Chiamaka in the doorway, she didn't even flinch. Relax, she said, smoothing the fabric over her hips, laughing like it was nothing, like it had always been nothing, every time she took something and called it a compliment to herself. Chiamaka took the dress back without a word and hung it carefully in its garment bag. She told herself again, this is my sister. Sisters do not do this to each other. She was already lying to herself by then, and some small, quiet part of her already knew it. 3 weeks before the party, Tobena stopped answering Chiamaka's calls on the first ring. He said he was busy with the new branch launch. She believed him because believing him was easier than what her instincts were already whispering. The engagement party was supposed to be the beginning of everything Chiamaka had worked for. She had saved for 8 months to afford the hall, the asoebi, the caterers. Her mother told her not to spend too much. Keep it simple, keep it humble, but let Nkechi buy 3 new outfits for the same event without a word of correction. The hall was full. Family from Enugu had traveled down. Chiamaka wore a soft blush gown she had designed herself, the first piece she had ever been proud of to wear in public. She was glowing. For one evening, she allowed herself to believe she had earned this. Then Nkechi stood up with a microphone in her hand. "I have something to say," she announced, smiling at the room the way she always smiled, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. "Tobena and I have been keeping a secret. I am carrying his child." The hall did not gasp. It went silent, the kind of silence that presses against the chest. Chiamaka did not scream. She did not throw anything. She simply turned to Tobena, searching his face for the denial that never came. "Chiamaka, I can explain," he said, standing but not moving towards her. "You didn't plan it," Chiamaka repeated softly, "but you kept doing it long enough to plan a child." Her mother rushed forward, not to hold Chiamaka, but to hold Nkechi. Sit down, you'll stress the baby." She fanned her younger daughter with a program card, while Chiamaka stood alone in her blush gown in front of 200 guests who had come to celebrate her. "Is she always dramatic?" an auntie whispered, loud enough to carry. "Maybe if she smiled more, dressed softer, a man would not stray." That was the moment she understood. This family had already chosen. They had chosen it long before that night. Every time they excused Nkechi, every time they called Chiamaka too serious, every time they let one daughter build while the other daughters simply took. She walked out of that hall in her blush gown and did not look back. What no one knew was that the fashion capital Chiamaka had saved, the joint account she'd opened with Tobena to fund her label for when the wedding money settled, was gone within the month. Tobena had needed it, he said, for the new baby, for a bigger apartment for Nkechi. Chiamaka's name was on the account, but the withdrawals were already made before she thought to check. She had built a man's second chance out of her own 2 hands, and he had used her own dream to build a life with her sister. She did not fight for it. She did not go to their mother crying. That night she sat alone in the small room she still rented above her mother's compound, listening to laughter drifting downstairs. Nkechi's laughter, loud and unbothered, as relatives fussed over her condition and brought her plates of jollof rice like she was already a bride carrying royalty. No one came upstairs to check on her. Chiamaka, not her mother, not one auntie. She packed one bag, boarded a bus to Abuja before sunrise, and disappeared from every family WhatsApp group without explanation. Her phone buzzed 3 times that first week, her mother asking where the good frying pan had gone, as if that was the emergency. Chiamaka turned the phone off for good after that. For the first year, she cleaned other people's mess for a living, literally. She took a job managing logistics for a small event planning company, the kind of low position no one from her old life would have respected. She learned the business from the inside, vendor contracts, venue leasing, what made an event succeed or collapse. She watched, she absorbed, she saved every naira she could. By the second year, she had left that company and started her own. Small at first, 3 weddings a month, working with borrowed chairs and a rented generator. She slept 4 hours a night. She answered her own calls. Nobody helped her. Nobody sent so much as a message asking if she was alive. By the 3rd year, her company, Halcyon Events, had grown enough to lease its first property, a run-down hall in Wuse that she renovated herself, negotiating every contractor's price down to the last kobo. She slept on a mattress in the back office for the first 6 months because paying rent on both the hall and an apartment would have broken her. She ate garri more nights than she wanted to admit. When a supplier tried to cheat her on a chandelier order, she drove to the warehouse herself at midnight and stood in the loading bay until the man agreed to fair terms, because she had learned the hard way that no one hands a woman fairness. She has to stand in the doorway and demand it. By the 4th year, She had 2 venues. By the 5th, 4. One of them a struggling but beautifully built event center back in Lagos, purchased quietly through a holding company so that no one, not least of all her family, would ever connect her name to it. She named the holding company after her grandmother, the only person in that family who had ever told her as a child that she was too much woman for people who only wanted a little. She never called home. Her mother tried twice in the 2nd year, then stopped. Chiamaka did not hate her for stopping. She simply understood, finally, that some people only reach for you when they need something, and her mother had never needed her, only what she provided. Word reached her anyway, the way news always finds its way back through cousins and old church members. Nkechi's baby had never come. There had been no pregnancy at all, only a lie to trap a man who was already halfway persuaded. Tobina married her regardless, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps because leaving would have meant admitting what he'd thrown away. His second business, the one Chiamaka's money had rescued years earlier, was buckling under bad partnerships and worse decisions. Nkechi spent what he couldn't afford to spend. The marriage limped along on appearances alone. 6 years passed. Chiamaka, now 34, stood in her Abuja office looking over a proposal from her Lagos operations manager. A booking request for the Lagos venue, a large one, a wedding, prepaid, deposit already cleared. She almost didn't look at the client's name. She had 100 bookings a month across her properties now. She rarely read them individually. But something made her open this one. Nkechi Eze. Groom, Tobina Okonkwo. Venue, the Ivory Room, Victoria Island, the crown property of Halcyon Events, the one Chiamaka personally redesigned, chandelier by chandelier, with her own hands and her own money. She sat with that name for a long time. She could have cancelled the booking. She could have quietly returned their deposit and let some other hall take the wedding. That would have been easy. Instead, she did something else. She called her event director and asked for the full file, vendor list, wedding planner, contract terms, and read every page. Buried in the fine print of the venue contract, one that Nkechi had signed without reading closely, was a standard damages clause tied to a supplier loan Halcyon had extended to the couple's own struggling business 2 years earlier when they needed emergency funding, and Halcyon's finance arm had quietly bought that debt from a failing bank. Halcyon had built the business large enough that she no longer needed to know every transaction personally, but this one had crossed her desk, and she remembered the names even then and had said nothing, done nothing, simply let the interest accrue like a debt collects dust in a drawer no one opens. She had never gone looking for revenge. She had built, that was all. And somewhere in the building, revenge had built itself, quietly, without her lifting a finger. That night, alone in her Abuja penthouse, Chiamaka sat with a glass of untouched wine and let herself remember. Not the humiliation, she had made peace with that years ago, but the girl she used to be, before that hall, before that microphone, before she learned to build walls faster than anyone could tear them down. She thought of the blush gown, still folded in tissue paper in a box she had never been able to throw away. She thought of her mother's hands reaching for Nkechi instead of her. She did not cry. She had cried enough in the first year to last a lifetime. Instead, she picked up her phone and typed a single note to herself. You do not need their apology to close this chapter. You only need your own permission. Then she booked her flight to Lagos. She flew to Lagos 3 days before the wedding. She told no one who she was. She walked the venue at night in a plain outfit, checking with lighting rigs herself, the way she checked every property before a major event. Her staff greeted her as Madam CEO and nothing more. Nkechi never saw her face once during setup. That was not the point. Chiamaka was not there to be seen, not yet. On the wedding day, she watched from the entrance as the ceremony began, dressed not for a scene, but for a decision. She had debated all night whether to walk in at all. In the end, she did, not for spite, but because 6 years of silence deserved one honest sentence spoken out loud, once, and then never again. She walked down that aisle in her ivory suit and said what needed saying. She watched her sister's bouquet hit the floor. She watched Tobena's face crumble under a truth he had been avoiding for 6 years. And then instead of staying to watch the wreckage, instead of reading the loan document aloud, instead of naming every lie in front of 200 guests, the way Nkechi had done to her, Chiamaka simply turned and walked back up the aisle. Outside, her events director was waiting with the final paperwork. "Madam, should we cancel the venue contract? Call in the loan?" he asked. Chiamaka looked back once at the doors of the ivory room, glowing gold against the Lagos night, full of people who once decided she wasn't worth defending. "No," she said quietly. "Let the wedding happen. Let them have their day. I didn't come to take anything from her. I came to show her that I don't need to." She signed a single document before she left, not a cancellation, but a forgiveness. She wrote off the loan entirely, every kobo of it, and instructed her director never to mention it to the couple. Let them wonder, for the rest of their marriage, why an anonymous investor had quietly cleared their business debt the same week of their wedding. Let them never know the peace they were living on came from the very woman they destroyed. She flew back to Abuja that same night. She did not call her mother. She did not wait for an apology that was never going to come. She had already built the only thing that mattered, a life so full and so hers that revenge felt small next to it. Sometimes the sweetest justice is not the one they see. It is the one you carry quietly, knowing exactly what you could have done and choosing peace instead, because your peace was never theirs to take in the first place. Chiamaka never went back to that family house. She sent her mother money every Christmas through her account manager, never with a note attached, never expecting one back, not out of bitterness, but because some doors are better left gently closed than slammed. She built a life in Abuja full of people who chose her, a company that carried her grandmother's name into rooms her grandmother never got to see, and a peace so complete that when people asked why she never married, she simply smiled and said, "I already gave a man everything I had once. Next time, someone will have to earn it." Somewhere in Lagos, a woman in an ivory suit walked out of a wedding she was never invited to and never looked back, because she had already won the only thing that ever truly mattered, herself. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because Gracious Folktales has many more stories like Chiamaka's, women who are broken down and built themselves back up into something no one could ever tear down again.